everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Took a couple weeks off for Thanksgiving, for the holidays. Take a break after this very stressful year, and now I'm back with episode 700. That's right, folks, 700 episodes. Almost 16 years. And on these special multiple of 100 episodes, I always have a guest on whose work has really affected me. Turns out a lot of them are comics people. I was looking back at the archives. Episode 200, Michael Kupperman, one of the most brilliant indie comics guys working today. 300, Chris Claremont. 600, Ben Edlund. And then today, episode 700, Brian Michael Bendis. If you don't know who Brian is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Cleveland, Ohio, comics writer Brian Michael Bendis knew from an early age he wanted to make comics. His late teens and 20s were spent making his own comics, some of them published by Caliber Press, and in 1996, a lot of this work was collected together at Image. This led to working on the Spawn spin-off Sam and Twitch, and in 1998, he began releasing Powers, which would go on to garner both critical and commercial success, as well as Harvey and Eisner Awards and many other awards. In 2000, Brian co-created Miles Morales when he began writing Ultimate Spider-Man. The next year, Brian began a defining run on Daredevil and co-created Jessica Jones with the start of Alias. And this is essentially just the first decade of his career. Since then, he went on to write defining runs on comics like Avengers and New Avengers, events like House of M, one of my favorites, books like Superman and Action Comics for DC, and most recently, for the 25th anniversary of Powers, Brian and artist Michael Avon Oeming, Michael, I hope I said your name correctly, are creating a new 12-issue series of Powers at Dark Horse, and it's fantastic. 3 issues in, and what a delight! So I had stopped reading comics when I was about 14 or so because it seemed uncool. This was, I guess, the mid-90s, something like that. And as a small Jew into indie rock, I already had enough going against me at school. I didn't want to be carrying around Ghost Rider, whatever else I was reading then. But I didn't stop reading because I didn't like comics. Well, I guess I kind of got a little big cool guns in the 90s. Not sure I'm a big cool guns kind of guy. But anyway, in college, my friend Kyle got me a subscription to Uncanny X-Men as a gift, and that started to get me back into reading comics. And there were 2 people who were kind of like my North Star. One of them, Grant Morrison. The other one, Brian Michael Bendis. And what a mensch! What a mensch Brian is. We talk about father issues, especially father issues as they're related to everyone who apparently writes at Marvel Comics. We talk about radical acceptance. We talk a lot about the act of creating in a way that I don't think I've talked about it that much with other people. So I thought that was very interesting. He's a good dude. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was really nice to talk to him. Coming up on the show, I got a lot of indie rock folks coming up. A lot of folks from punk, from the avant-garde edge of things. Claire Rousey. She's great. That was wonderful. Cassie Carlson from Gorilla Toss. Stephen Brown, founder of the experimental post-punk band Tuxedo Moon. We talk a ton about San Francisco in the 60s and 70s. Super interesting stuff. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Brian. This is my problem with control stuff, which is, I think, prior to fascism really kind of settling in the United States, I was getting to a point where I was okay, like letting go, like being like, okay, there's stuff I can't control. I'm going to concentrate on what I can. And then on the backdrop of like, well, things are spiraling totally out of control, both nationally and globally. And on the backdrop of that, now, like, there's little things. Like this morning, letting the dog out in the yard, she comes back in, she's got 4 fleas on her. And I'm just like, now we have to deal with that.
Well, but of all the things you just listed, the one you can actually affect change immediately to getting the fleas off your
But
dog.
okay, great. Well, here's the thing. We got the fleas off. I spend more
Mhm.
time this morning than I want trying to comb through her fur, trying to find them.
Lifelong dog person, been there, done that. Yep.
But now, what do we do about the yard? So here's where we start spiraling. Here's where the personal stuff where I'm like, before I could be like, all right, let me just figure out a plan. We'll figure this stuff out. I have the emotional reserves to deal with this. Now, emotions depleted.
Hmm.
Brian? Where do we go?
You'll handle it. You just will. But this is, these things will be solved. You will solve them.
That's not. See, that's more of like you've come to a place where you're just like, hey, it's not my problem. This is Andy's problem. I don't have to deal with
No,
it.
no, I hear you, but this is, again, I don't have all the details of the scenario, but this is a solvable problem, and you are conflating one stress with another stress. These are two different stresses.
Brother.
They may
Yes.
feel the same, but they are two different stresses. And also, listen, I come to you in this conversation pre-traumatized from medical events and stuff that kind of levels your ability to see how much of control is an illusion, and as much as you want to think you're in control of stuff, you're really not. And lots of years of therapy will help you get, I mean, not everyone's on a different plane, but it took years of time and experience for me to come to love it, not just accept it, but like kind of hugging your trauma instead of fighting it to get rid of it. You're like, no, this is in me. So just embrace it. It's very hard to do. It's called radical acceptance. Is you radically accept the things you cannot change, but at the same time, do everything in your power, in your space, to make the world the way you want it to be.
Yeah. Okay.
And not everyone's perfect for it. Not everyone is everyone thinking about their best self all the time. But when you are, that's it. And I will say, getting to the subject at hand, that is a lesson you also learn from writing fiction, is that you're writing a world with better rules than the one you're living in.
That's always, I think, my weak spot when it comes to writing is that I'm good at the characters and I'm good at the interactions, dialogue. I think maybe it's one of the main reasons I'm very much drawn to your work.
Thank you.
Where I have a problem is then thinking about the world itself impinging upon these characters.
No, it's my favorite. It's actually my favorite part, because that's when you get to challenge the ideas of your characters. Like, yeah, like you literally have to put challenges and roadblocks in front of them so we can see what they do. It's great to write fun dialogue, and when you get into the zone, it's the best. But just like the real world, people say a lot of things, but it's what they do that really defines who they are. Not to quote every movie you've ever seen, but there really is a reality to that. You've seen it many, many times. If someone says one thing and does another, and I'm not talking about the global world that we're living in. I'm talking about the people, the day to day of life, where you're counting on someone to be something and they're either not up to it or can't see that they're not being their best self, or are actively lying.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And those are the things I like to write about. I live in constant questioning of why people do certain things, or how they can trick themselves into believing something that hurts them in the long run, and either consciously or unconsciously. I'm now at an age where I'm like, oh, I will never have this question answered, but I can't stop asking it. I can't stop creating story engines that allow me to explore it as far and wide as I need to, right? And it's always very interesting to me that sometimes I'll see response to my work that, regardless of the quality of writing, I can't engage with that. But when you see, I'll bring us the subject I'm bringing up, or the conundrum that I brought to my character, is very engaging with certain readers, because they're totally thinking the same thing and do want some kind of catharsis, or just, oh, good, someone else is thinking this too, great. And then the other people who you can see just on the level of, I don't want to deal with this right this second, or you're making me think about something I'm not ready to think about, or I'm just going to deny that this is part of the human condition. and then they get mad, like frustrated for you for bringing it up, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then, again, it's you can tell from the way the slam is worded that, like, oh, you're dealing with some, like, it's always with me with parental issues, like you're like, a lot of us, because we're, Stan Lee babies and writing Stan Lee characters, there's a lot of father issues going on,
Uh-huh.
particularly in Marvel comics. It's in the woodwork. And I've this when I first started working at Marvel, Joe Quesada asked me what my relationship with my dad was, and I go, "Oh, it doesn't really exist." And he goes, "Oh, you're going to do great here." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Oh, because Stan, every relationship is the dad either is the villain, abandoned, or murdered in front of the person." And you go through Norman Osborn, Matt Murdock, Peter Parker. It is all over it, to the point where I did even want to ask Stan, "Hey, what was the deal with your dad?" But by the time I met Stan, he was in like his late 70s. You know, ask a dude in his late 70s what your deal with your dad was, unless he brings it up, right? So anyway, my point is that, like, I will often be on these roads, consciously, sometimes subconsciously, and you'll see people reacting to the work. Either they feel like seen and heard and run towards the work, or they get, I'm not there yet, and get angry for you for even making them think those thoughts, for even for a second, or challenging their belief system. Instead of getting excited about it, they get very angry. And I'm deeply fascinated by it. Not the
If
question you asked, but it is about
no,
people's relationship to controlling their stresses and the things that they have around
no,
them.
no, it's all in there. And the thing that I've come to, I think, in the last couple years is that I was raised, and I was a philosophy professor. I studied analytic philosophy, which is very logic based. I don't like it. And one of the reasons I left was it didn't feel like it actually captured what it's like to be human. And then I found out there's other kinds of ways to do philosophy. But
Mm-hmm.
the guiding principle of that, and I think there's a guiding principle that like weaves its way into a lot of fiction in the 20th century too, is the idea that like people at the end of the day are consistent. And then I've come to the fact that I'm like, I don't think they are
Yeah, I don't think that.
consistent. I don't think their psychology is this. I don't think they always react the same way in every. And some people do. I strive to, but I think a lot of
Yes.
people are just, especially like seeing people's politics in the last like 5 to 10 years. I don't think they have a coherent. I don't think a lot of people have a coherent politics. I don't think a lot of people have a single psychology. And I think that's what makes what I'm coming to realize about humans. At least that's a more fascinating, interesting, especially like from an artistic point of view, from writing, a much more
Mhm.
interesting way to write people too.
Well, I mean, the only thing like, even though we are in a lot of areas in a world we've never been before, everyone keeps like equating historical evidence to where we are now, and not it's not all A to B. It's not, they're not equal. What's happening now hasn't one for one happened before. It's a little different. That's the scary part. You can't look at history and go, "Oh, this is like that." I'm like, there's parts of it that are 100%. You can even watch like SNL sketches from the 80s that feel very much like, "Oh, you are talking about very similar subjects to what we're dealing with right now," right? Like, even watching there's a documentary on Peacock called "Did Downey Wrote That?" and it's about Jim Downey, the great SNL writer who was there for decades.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a pop culture writer that hit more home runs over a longer period of time. When you watch it, you're like, Jesus Christ. I mean, you hit every time, everywhere you went. And in those sketches, you see similar things that are going on to what's going on today, even though our version is got its own special sauce. But it's there are lessons to learn historically, and questions to ask that only get answered in time or through experience.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense to me. But yeah, we're always dealing with this. Those who question always question. Those who don't never do. And again, I'm not making a judgment on it. It's just some people question everything that goes on around them, both artistically and philosophically, which, by the way, probably the same thing. And or the Venn diagram's pretty tight. Just, I know a lot of writers. I don't know one that isn't thinking like a philosopher on some level, even if they're writing like battle ninjas versus, zombies. There's an idea behind it, or they wouldn't be doing it. So yeah,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
but that's why people come to our stories because they're like, give me some time away from the track my brain's on. Take me away. Let me recalibrate. Let me think better thoughts. I mean, I was a writer of Superman. That is why people read Superman. I would like to think the thoughts of the best person. Like you really feel that while you're writing the character that A, if it's not the best thoughts, then it's not Superman's thoughts. Never with it. So that's takes a while for any writer to get there because we're all just human. And B, you feel the audience going, "This is why I'm here." Like even when the James Gunn movie came out, that's what people
100%.
were relating to, which is like he's really trying to be the best version of himself, no matter what everyone throws at him, right? Both physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
So that you do feel going back to the Stan Lee of it all. There's a job here, and the job is to give people a taste of humanity that they're not getting.
I've written down radical acceptance and control. I want to go back to these. But
I will
first,
say radical acceptance was a big one from therapy. It's not for everybody, and some people get really aggravated when they hear the words. I have a good friend who I literally was going through some stuff, and I just heard it from my therapist, and I said, I am processing radical acceptance, and he went, "Oh, fuck you," and then like yeah, like and said it to me 4 more times over the course of a month, and it'd be really funny because I never brought it up again, but he kept coming up to me going, "Radical acceptance, fuck." I go, "No, it's hard. It's really hard."
I want to get back to it because what
Sure.
I want to go to first was the thing that jumped out to me when you're saying like this idea of, thinking about like psychological types. And yes, there are going to be people who, the thing that I've come to, I think, with thinking about how humans think is that it is not coherent. And in fact, it's on a spectrum. So yes, there are going to be, whether it's in the 1980s or in 2025, you're going to have these very kind of like simple thinkers. I'm not going to put a judgment on them. I'm just going to say simple thinkers. You're going to have people who are questioning everything in a both good, which I'm going to say us. We question things in a good way versus say maybe a QAnon way or so, or whatever that's warped
Oh
into
no,
at this point.
I'm me. A lot of our friends are always like QAnon is just a version of conspiracy, which has always been part
Sure.
of society, literally back to the caveman days, right?
Sure. I just wanted to
That
differentiate the two. That's
whatever's
all I want
going
to
on
do.
in the world is somehow not interesting enough, and you got to add some. You got to yes and it. It's kind of an amazing
Yeah.
thing. It always will be a fascinating thing to me
Yeah. But
because I get to do it for a living, so it's not conspiracy.
sure, sure,
But people who
sure.
don't have a creative outlet take their creative outlet and turn it into. Yes, I've this has been going on for literally as long as man has lived. So
Yes. If you want to, you could do a what if with things, whereas the other people have to do what if with life and then write about it on Reddit or 4chan or whatever.
I think it's
But
why what if has always been such a popular thing, and people are always there in the what if space.
the
Anyway,
thing the thing
hi.
that jumped out high. The thing that jumped out to me though, the questioning part where I'm just like, "Oh, well, maybe I'm off base. I don't think I am." Me, and I think with you goes back to being raised Jewish.
A lot. There is a lot there. There's and when I think about getting to the premise of the podcast, when I think about my connection to comic books, and then slowly realizing how many Jewish authors were responsible for me being pulled towards the thing where other areas of Judaism were not as appealing to me or what weren't calling to me, but comic books were. And the messaging in any Stan Lee comic is very Talmudic and in a very simple, elegant way. Here's a story that tells you that with great power comes great responsibility. So is every story in the Gemara. So, how fascinating that when my rabbi tells me a story about 3 sheep and a shepherd, I my eyes roll up in my head. But if you tell me a guy got bit by a spider and it has the same story, I'm all in. And now I'm on a quest to make myself part of that system.
Yeah.
So, but then you realize how many Jewish people made the art form, like how many Jewish people escaped one reality, came here, weren't good enough for people who don't know. Like a lot of artists and writers that came here during World War II or before or after came here and found themselves not accepted by like the Mad Men ad agencies in New York, like they wouldn't hire Jewish people or would hire one. And so a lot of furiously talented people like Will Eisner and Jack Kirby had found themselves trying to figure out how to make their way as an artist when certain lanes were closed to them, right? So there's a lot of comics, not all of it, but an enormous amount of the American comic book industry is based on that Jewish experience. And the stories that came out of there have that in them, whether they were conscious about it or not, which I'm always fascinated by. But anyway, and then when you're aware of it, you can't unsee it, is basically what I'm saying. And when I was coming up as a kid, when my rabbis who were deeply trying to connect with this little spaced out nerd who would just think about Star Wars and Spider-Man all day, they would pull me aside and say, "Hey, Superman was created by two Jewish boys in Cleveland, and this is Jewish and that's Jewish, and the first person that gave me a copy of Mouse was my rabbi, who was literally trying to connect with me, right? And here's the most Jewish thing you'll ever read, and it's a comic book, right? And so these things were very formidable to me and carry through as I go.
Yeah. So how did it manifest in you though? When I was a kid, this idea of, oh, you should question things, it got into me, and then I questioned everything, and my parents were like, stop questioning our authority. And then at school, people would be like, stop questioning our authority. And the
I
rabbi
don't
would kick me out of religious school because I would constantly question everyone's authority and goof off.
I wasn't questioning authority. I now I know I was, but at the time you're just being a little child, right? Like I got kicked out of morning prayer for wearing a police concert T-shirt that showed Sting's bare arms on the like he was like arms like this, and he was there, and the rabbi kicked me right out of school for wearing what he called a homoerotic T-shirt, and I'm like, well, that says more about you than me.
Mm.
And yeah, and it was funny, like what I got in trouble for in school, and I was weirdly in trouble for someone who never did anything wrong, but I did spend an enormous amount of time in the boys' locker room drawing superheroes in my textbooks instead of going to class and stuff like that. But I now know I had picked my path and I was just doing everything I could to stay on my path. You know what I mean? Which means like, oh, I'll do the minimal amount of work I have to do to stay in society, and then everything else is going towards comics. And this happened at a very young age, so I wasn't questioning so much as I had like now I know like I had felt a feeling. I was reading my comics as a young man. I was very into them very early. They were really big in my life. And then as you grow, you get to that certain age, a young age where you start seeing the credits in the comic books and oh, who's George Perez and why do I feel differently when I'm reading a George Perez comic versus a Ross Andrew comic? And like then you start memorizing names and they're like, oh, this person makes me feel this way and this way is way better than how I normally feel, right? So I'm like, and as soon as you put the dots together, and it takes years to go, oh, someone's job is to make me feel this way. Well, then that'll be my job. That's the job I will have. And then that I at a very early age, I think I stood up at the Passover table and announced that I was going to be the artist of Spider-Man. As soon as I figured out Spider-Man had an artist, I'm like, well, that's what I'll do. And years ago, my mom turned to me and goes, "Oh man, you were so close. That's crazy. Like you really you Babe Ruthed it. You like aimed like you pointed at the
Mhm.
fence. And you know."
They weren't like, Brian, we asked you to read page 12 of the Gada.
No,
Please,
that happened too. No,
just
it
get
was a
back to
lot
it.
of me spacing out, but I was so diligent I was literally making comics. Like I wasn't farting around. I wasn't getting in trouble. I wasn't just like skipping school. I was creating artwork
Right.
all the time, like constantly. So I think it became when I figured out the balance a little bit, it became the charming part of me. Like it was the thing about me and my friend group that made me different than everyone else, but in a positive way, you know?
Yeah.
Also, when you're young and have a myopic passion, people dig it. People want to help you get there. I'm sure you felt this in your journey as well, when you're like, oh, you're serious? Oh, then let me show you how to do this. Let me point you in the right direction. Let me give you a number of someone who can help. And that's always been my way. And I spend a lot of time trying to be that for others because so much was given to me in that space.
Yeah, I really want to try to figure out. Tell me about the context, the time period. The '70s in
I think
Cleveland.
about it a lot. I sent you that Fortune and Glory the musical. So I
Oh,
did a book this year, an autobiographical book about my very short time as the writer of the Spider-Man Broadway musical, but I used it as an excuse to really do a comic book origin story
yeah, I love it.
graphic novel, which I always wanted to do. I had done one years ago about being in Hollywood, and that was fun to write because everything was cartoonishly off the rails and fun to write about because nothing was going in a way that I understood. Whereas in comics, there was a great deal of, like everyone has, a great deal of trying to figure it out creatively and professionally, struggle for many, many years. And then all of a sudden it kind of worked out and stayed that way, which makes it not an interesting book when once and everything kind of worked out. Okay, okay, good for you. What do I got to hear about it for? And but those early days and what set me on this path and what brought me to the weird Broadway stage that I didn't belong on. I wanted to kind of unpack it all, and I recently did. So a lot of this is sort of fresh in my mind. But I was born in 1967, so by the mid 70s, I was reading, and I was reading almost exclusively comic books, like just like and again, so it's comic books, it's Stan at his loudest as far as the culture goes. There's not a lot of famous authors, and Stan is one of them. It was like Stan, Leon Uris, like who was like a known author of the time, right? So Stan was literally going on shows, really speaking it. Stan's soapbox. He was a real personality that would guide you towards all of their projects in a very warm and inviting way. And at the same time, it's the rise of Spielberg and Lucas and Star Wars. So, like all of this is happening all at once, and they are very connected to the point where Marvel's producing Star Wars comics. I mean, like everything was like coming together, and then from
But
then,
Brian, can I interrupt you for a second?
sure,
It didn't feel far away. The reason I asked, or
sure.
I wanted to start talking about this, is because I'm from Pennsylvania. I love talking to other Rust Belt Jews.
Cleveland,
For me, growing up, I'm a little younger than you, but growing up in the '80s, this stuff felt distant. When you say like, "Oh, I saw the credits, I knew it was a job," I guess I knew it was a job. I guess I knew I would see the Jim Starlin or whoever,
yeah,
Rob
no, it's
Liefeld.
part of it was me reading like we weren't well off, so buying comics was an event, and I would like literally read every word that was printed. I would read the Evil Knievel ads. I would read the indicia, legal indicia. Like I'd memorize it and write my own version for myself. Like if I've, as I've, I, really like Sea Monkey ads, I can quote them verbatim. I still think there should be a Tashin coffee table book of Hostess Twinkie ads.
Yes.
I've pitched this to no avail. Uh, um, anyway, I was making a meal out of every book I was getting, which was also changing how I was perceiving the work. I was reading them differently than other people read their comics, who literally fold them up in half, read them disposably, and toss them as they were meant to be. And that's not what I or my friends were doing. I was like, but to describe to you, was saying growing up in the 80s. So from 77 to 85 is one of the biggest creative and business arcs of the industry that ever existed. The direct market debuted or solidified. It was always kind of there in t-shirt shops and everything like that, if you know your history. But like what we know today to be like comic book stores filled with comic books, that was that literally birthed around me as I was growing, and then the art form started birthing around me and growing as I was literally as I was discovering it. A lot a lot of me and my friends the same age. So we're there as John Byrne is on X-Men, as George Perez is on Avengers, as Walt Simonson is on Thor, and
Right.
Frank Miller is on Daredevil. And so every book you're picking up is almost like a revolution of ideas and ways to consider the page and just fun as hell. Like it's all the things plus way more than you'd ever expect. And my feeling of the time was that's what you wanted from all your media, but TV was very junky at the time. Like the base, there was always good TV, but there was the base level of just like variety shows and junky, procedurals that were not trying to raise the roof.
Chips.
And yeah, there are Chips. God bless Chips is on there my whole childhood, never pulled me towards it. Whereas any issue of Daredevil is going to like fill my brain for a month, right, of ideas and ways to consider things, and all of these creators were then the subjects of like fanzines. And so you get to like spend like there was like this Fantico fanzines where Frank Miller would then tell you who Will Eisner is. And I'm like, oh, now I know who Will Eisner is and take me down that path. So the medium and its way to communicate to us was growing as literally I was the age to receive it all, like perfectly. Like Camelot 3000 rattled me to my core. Just exactly what I needed to see when I needed to see it. Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, Ronin, all of V for Vendetta, all of these things are coming out while I'm in high school and while I'm headed towards college. So like, and I'm sitting there going, I decided 10 years ago I was going to do this for a living before I read Love and Rockets, before I read Cerebus, right? So all this is going on, and I'm just getting wound up like on a level that it's just like let me in, coach. Like, how do I find my way? And but still, the biggest hurdle was finding information about how to physically do the job. Like that information pre-internet wasn't as available at all. In fact, I remember scouring the back of Comic Scene magazine or Comic Buyer's Guide, like looking for any artist mentioning any pen or any tool, draftsman tool that I go, okay, that all. And anyone mention any, I just run and buy it. Didn't care who it was or what they were talking about. And so it was almost like you felt like an archaeologist. You felt like you're basking in the glow of a medium that's exploding, while at the same time an archaeologist looking for how could this be? And it almost felt like sometimes like you were trying to get a magician to tell you how they do their magic tricks, because so many people just wouldn't share their craft journey because they were either not sure they should or they weren't confident in it. I've met a lot of creators who don't want to share their process because they're just not confident in it to share with people. And the people who are, let's say a Scotty Young, who is so, or Jim Mahfood, or my friend Mike Oming, who will, here, I'll put the camera on me and draw all day. Just watch, because I am confident that I am on a journey. I know I'm on a journey. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but here's what I know so far. And share it with people. And I think it changes people's response to all of this.
Uh-huh. I gotta ask, the thing that I think, and especially like reading the autobiography,
Thank
the thing that struck me was that you seem to be emotionally resilient in a way. Again, I always use myself on the show as a kind of like jumping
Maybe
off base,
projecting that one. Yeah, go ahead.
right? The thing that like both fear, I come from a middle class background, but I was afraid of, not a failure and not having money and, that kind of stuff. You came from you said a low income background. So
Yeah.
that I'm curious about.
Not
I don't know how you
poor,
were.
but not well off. I had some friends that were well off that balanced my life a little bit. Like I could go sleep over better houses than I lived in, but like I had to get a job to feed my comic book habit. Like I
Yeah.
had to have a paper out so I could go buy comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I am. I will say I think not having anything makes you not so fearful about losing it. Like I think there's some of that a little bit. Again, I don't have that all worked out, but I am deeply fascinated and relieved by my not being afraid to fail. And I know some people who are like almost paralyzed with fear about failing. And even after it happens, they get more paralyzed. And I've like, I, I talk about this with my students to the point where failure, um, it's kind of like one of the best things that could happen. I mean, of course, having a big win that everyone loves is the best thing that could happen. But if you take a big swing and you miss and you learn something from it, that's almost as good to the body and soul, to the point where when something's not working, my body has started reacting differently because it knows right around the corner, here comes the good stuff. Just keep going. Just don't. The failure is not trying at all. So that's never been the real failure for me. So like fucking up, and I've had some like big public things that didn't go the way I wanted them to go, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I learned from it. And it was really exciting, and I, but I learned what could be better than that. So I don't know. I tell people failure is great. Failure means you're in the game. Like my friend Kelly Sue just was on a panel this weekend, and there's a quote of her online going, "Hey, you know what happens if you write a shitty book? You're an author. You're not sitting around wishing you were an author. You're a fucking author." And she's absolutely right.
She's
You
great.
want to be an author? Write a book.
Yeah.
You want
Yeah.
to bitch about it? Don't.
But when you were a kid, were you that emotionally resilient? Like, if you fucked up, were you
I
just like, was it just like water off a duck's back?
I don't see it as resilient. I was dealing with what I had. I had friends. I had a good support group in my life always. That is something I'm always kind of overwhelmed by. So it didn't feel like resilience other than like I kept having moments in my life that kept me going. Like I met Walt Simonson when I was 12. That's in the book, right? That carried me through high school. Like I was told my path was correct by the person that matters the most, and he couldn't have been nicer. And even though I had met since then quite a few comic creators that were nowhere near as nice or loving or accepting or supportive as Walt Simonson, none of it mattered because Walt was. You know what I mean? Like, and a couple others as well. George was very nice to me when I was a kid as well. And when I would meet a John Byrne or someone who was unkind, it wouldn't matter to me. I would be like, huh, look at you being. Yeah, it's so I never saw it as resilience other than I don't know what the word of it is. The smarter version of that Jim Carrey moment in Dumb and Dumber, where it's like, so you're saying there's a chance, like if you want to do this, you're just kind of ignoring the odds and just keep making your stuff.
Right.
And so there were times, like particularly in the '90s, where now I had a group of friends and we're all making comics together, and I'm part of uh, a bunch of people that are up and coming. And then the realization that as much as I wanted Marvel and DC's attention, what I was actually doing in my work wasn't what they do. Stop bothering them. Like I literally would send them everybody Jinx. I'm like, they don't publish anything like Jinx. Why am I bothering Tom Brevoort with a copy of Jinx? This isn't what they do. And it took years for me to even like be at a mailbox going, why am I who am I sending this to, and what am I expecting them to do with it, right? And then of course the minute I thought that thought, they called me, and it brought me in. So it's funny, but I like really realizing like what kind of creator I was and what I was doing. Like even that wasn't stopping me. It was just like really trying to be as aware of myself and my work as I possibly could as I was going. And it's hard to do while you're in it, you know? It's easy to look
Yeah.
back or step back once it's over, but when you're in it, it's very hard. But again, I was very lucky. I met David Mack at a young age and we became like best friends like immediately at a convention, and that now I had a partner to suffer through all of this with, and that makes him 10 times more fun, and then I met Mike Oming, and then so whatever happens with Powers, whether it succeeds or fails, up and down, have a TV show, kind of, maybe, like all of that was a blast because I have a best friend right next to me having it. And the closest thing I know that's on in the media right now that makes me feel that way, I know how it feels, is the Lonely Island podcast.
Mm.
It's an excellent podcast where these four friends who have been through a lot of stuff together, both wins and failures, talk about them all equally. And when you hear Andy Samberg unpack a failed sketch with such delight, not that it failed, but that they tried and they learned from it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it feels like for any creative person. And your friend was right next to you, so how bad was it?
Yeah.
You laughed, you know what I mean, or you cried and someone hugged you. It's those are
Yeah.
the so I don't feel like it was resilient so much as there's a part of it where you're just barreling through. And again, it's not resilient so much, and it's also you're not ignoring the facts of the world. You're just choosing not to empower them, right? Like never show me the odds, like that line from Star Wars. Like that is what it's like to be a creative person. Like don't show me all the books in the bookstore. Look at all the like you walk into Barnes and Noble, you could literally just ball up onto the floor and go, no one will ever read my book. There's too much in the world. Um, but at the same time, having partners and people to share it with makes it all worthwhile. So even if I completely never hit, and there were years there where it didn't look like I would ever do anything more than sell enough books to make another book, which
Mm.
is a gift in itself. But there was no part of me that thought, oh, I'm going to have a hit book because there was no evidence that that was ever happening. But I had my friends with me, so who gives a shit?
Yeah. But like, I guess I'm curious about, were you encouraged when you were younger to
Yes.
express your emotions? Like, did your mom,
Um,
you
yeah, my
said in
mom, who
the,
literally is in the room back there, lives with us. Uh, she didn't fully understand what the passion was, but she understood it was passion. And like I would like I have a very like very strong memories of running into the living room with like a Brian Boland drawing of Superman from Superman 400 and just being overwhelmed by a piece of artwork and having like no one to share it with and getting the, not that I'm being humored, but like people wanting to be there for me. Like I remember reading Frank Miller's Ronin and being so rattled to my core creatively and emotionally about what the possibilities and like how I like actually had like it was the first comic that scared me like a jump scare got me. And my best friend Izzy read the book, even though he's not in comics, read the book too, just so I'd have someone to talk to about it. I know I put that in the book as well, but these are moments where, yeah, I was being supported emotionally by my friends and family because what I was trying to do was so, all right, he wants to make a comic book. Yeah, let's root for him. And so yeah, so it was that kind of support. And then when I walked into a convention and immediately met my peers, like I've never been alone since in this journey. So it's not so much resilience as seeing the strength and
yeah,
collaboration. Also like figuring out like when you're alone in your room trying to figure out comics, and even though you see there's 6 or 7 people's names in the credits, even if it's like Dave Sim, there's still 4 other people's name in the credits. You collaboration is being spoken of all the time, and until you start actively collaborating, you don't go, oh, that's the part I wanted. I want to collaborate.
yeah,
Like I
100%.
want to share this. I want to yes and with anyone who wants to do this with me. And then and then that becomes like when I realized like there were times where I'm like, this feels like I'm addicted. Like I'm addicted to art coming in the email. Like, why do you write so much? Because I'm addicted to collaboration. Because it is the most magical on its base level. Something's being made you couldn't make by yourself. And then every once in a while you hit some height that I could never have gotten there without Mike Oming being part of this. Right? Like
Yeah,
this and you know it because you've seen it in pop culture, like, and again, not comparing, but like John Lennon and Paul McCartney were both brilliant men who did brilliant work. But Lennon McCartney was a third entity that they couldn't get to without the other one. And they knew it after it was over, right? I have that with a few people, like places I can go that I can't get to without them. It's the best part of the whole thing,
yeah,
hands down. Yeah.
yeah. Is it fulfilling some psychological? I know what it does in me. I know why I like that. I know how. It's you describing that like I'm like, yes, that's the exact same feeling. Like, what psychologically is it doing where you're just like, my wife's a stand-up, and she's
That's
like,
awesome.
no, I like being on my own on stage.
No,
And
yeah, but she's not alone on stage. There's an audience and they're reacting and she's reacting to them. It's all collaboration.
mm,
If you make a comic book and you write it and draw it and letter it and publish it yourself on your own paper, on your own paper mill, the person reading it is collaborating with you because they're filling in the space. The white borders in between the panels is the space for the reader to take up timing, space, voice, and they're collaborating with you. Right? Scott McCloud says it very directly in Understanding Comics, which I highly recommend if you're interested in a more philosophical conversation about this medium. And so you realize that even going in, like I can make choices on the page that create a reaction for a reader, and then they come back to me sometimes, and sometimes I don't hear from them, but sometimes I'll hear the reaction or I'll hear what they have added to the story No, I've learned don't tell them no, you added that part. Right? It's fun, but they don't want to hear that. Like I've had there was like a sex scene or an intimated sex scene in Jessica Jones. You don't see the scene. You just see her face and the end of it. And it's never clear what the actual act is. But my whole life, people have told me what they thought that scene was, including the Jessica Jones writers' room had me come in and say, "Tell us what's in that scene." I go, "Well," and they go, "What do you think?" And they told me, and I went, "Oh," and they go, "Is that it?" And I go, That's up to you." And people get angry at you when you like, "No, tell me what it is." Like, and I'm like, "No, I want you. It was built for you to fill in the thing." I just did iFanboy. There's Ron Richards at iFanboy. He's been chasing me around for 20 years because I won't say what was in the closet in an issue of Avengers where Hawkeye goes to visit Wanda Maximoff after he found out she's been struggling mentally. And she says, "Behind that door is my friend Agatha Harkness." And he looks at the door, and we can tell from the way it's directed by Alex Maleev, he does not trust that that's what's behind the door, but then chooses not to open the door. Literally a mystery box. I'm going to choose not. I don't. If what's behind that door is not what my friend said, then I know my friend is in a very bad place, and I would rather just be with my friend right now. Right? I'd rather just have this moment. And literally to this day, what's behind the door? What's behind, Brian? Seriously, what's behind the door? No, tell me. I won't tell anybody. What's behind the door? And I'm like, I want this collaboration with you.
Okay. Yes. But here we go back to control issues. We go back to something I've always struggled with, letting the mystery be. And I think that is interesting that you are someone who is just like, you know what? Maybe I didn't mean anything. Whatever. Maybe I didn't actually want.
No, I always know. When I'm doing it,
so you do. So you do have a thing, but you're okay with there like being multiple interpretations of it, and you're just like, it's out in the world. I'm not going to exert my authorial voice and force a decision.
I love when other creators do that for me. I've experienced that. Like again, the most obvious is David Lynch. I'm not going to explain it to you.
Yeah.
You just take it in and let it be part of you.
100%. I love like I think a lot about Mulholland Drive, where I'm just like, you know what? I don't need there to be an explanation of like how the two parts are connected. Obviously, there's that box, and you go through the box. Is it another dimension? I don't need that explained. I enjoy the feeling of it, and I think that's the thing where I'm trying to like as someone who grew up in Ohio in the 70s, you seem connected to your emotions in a way that like I grew up in a very waspy Jewish family and it felt very repressed, even though my parents are from New York, and you would think that they are the like they should have been the stereotype of like the New York Jew, but instead it was like extremely Protestant. And
yeah, I know. I have a lot of friends in that space. I grew up differently than that. A divorced home, basically a single mom raising me and my brother and doing the best she could with the help of the Jewish community that we were part of. So that was I grew up, and my thing was comics. It's just of my peer group, of which I'm still friends with quite a few of them from that time. That was my thing, So that was it. I guess I was so focused on that being my thing that some of this other stuff just didn't matter so much to me. And also I saw hypocrisy in some of the spaces I was growing up in that made me immediately disconnect from them. I had a rabbi who was a frustrating human. It wasn't his best self, yet we're told people of the cloth are the best versions of us. I'm like, this person is clearly not the best version of us. He's not even the best person in this room, right? And it did make me go, well, I'm just going to listen to what Stan Lee says. He'll be my rabbi. Walt had a beard. He'll be my rabbi. I chose my my leadership, I guess, for lack of a better term. And again, none of it conscious, but now that I look back, that's exactly what happened, 100%.
Yeah.
And grateful for the adults and there was always even just like employers and stuff who just, oh, let me help this little idiot out. Let me just move him 20 degrees and maybe he'll see the sunshine for what it is. And that happened quite a lot. And I know it's why I teach today.
Like pointing out like a wind-up toy, like it's going off in the wrong direction.
Yeah, just move. Yeah, you're almost there, buddy. Just let me tilt you a little bit. And
Did
also,
your
I didn't have a dad. A lot of these men in my world knew I didn't have a dad. So every time someone could, like, give me a little something.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when did they get divorced? Were you already like kind of a conscious person?
No, they got divorced. I was 5. My brother was 1. And as I got older, the realities of why my mom broke up with my dad became very obvious to me as a young man. He was way not into this space of my life, even though he did take me to my first comic book. Like he didn't know what to do with me on the weekends. So if there were like, oh, there's a comic book, like I would come to him with things I wanted to do. And he would come, and even though he didn't get it, he took me to meet Walt Simonson, right? So I can't deny that that happened, right?
Mm.
But when it came time for college, he was not into what this path, so it was frustrating.
Did he have like an actual want and desire for you, or was it just like
Well,
not comics?
no, I don't like. Also, my mom didn't understand it either. She told me I don't fully get this, right? And and I have 4 kids, and I'm eagerly looking forward to them coming to me with something I don't get, so I could be cool like my mom was and go, all right, I will. So there's something real. Clearly, there's something real here. It's an industry. It's not one I'm engaged in, but you want to be part of it. It's speaking to you. You won't shut up about it. Clearly, this is the thing, right? I'm excited to see if any of my kids engage in a space that I don't understand or perceive, but
Yeah. I mean, how much authority did your dad exert in your life? Or was it just like he's the
none.
guy on the weekends that you go
Yeah,
see? And
he's long past weekend guy. We didn't understand each other. Cold fish. He wasn't abusive. He didn't do anything. It just wasn't wired to engage with us, or like I like if he was attempting, I couldn't feel it. But I do have memories. Like, I mean, your wife's a stand-up. Comedy is a big part of my nerd lanes. Like I am as big of a comedy nerd as I am a comic book nerd. My dad played me my first Bill Cosby at the time.
sure.
70s Cosby, very different Cosby. At least we thought. And George Carlin, like my first George Carlin, my shit is stuff and your stuff is shit. My dad played me. So which brought me to Letterman. And that's kind of the end of that. There's Letterman and SCTV and SN. Like, there's no disconnect to me to the comedy world and the lessons you can learn from a world of comedy than there is to comics. In fact, I saw them very similarly. I was learning more from career lessons from comics because they were being more open about it than comic book creators were. So there would be, even like in the early days of cable, there'd be a lot of like CNBC talk shows, or Jerry Seinfeld and Paul Reiser would go on a talk show and talk about fucking up at a club in a way that made me feel like fucking up this page. I understand you're telling me how to get past this, right? Whereas at the moment, comic creators weren't doing that. Now, God bless all of my friends and our heroes who will go on podcasts and will honestly speak of the journey so people can learn from it and not feel so alone in it. I'm telling my students all the time what a gift it is that there's like almost an unlimited amount of inspiration you can find from comic creators now that just wasn't available
Yeah.
to me in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, this show started because I was reading Steve Martin's autobiography, and it goes from him doing
Born
magic.
Standing Up was the base level of what the New Fortune Glory book was, because he did the smart thing like that was when I go, oh, so literally the moment he stepped on the set of The Jerk, he never really had a bad day ever again.
Yeah.
So he stops the book there. Like it literally stops being interesting once I get my way, right? And I'm like, that's the book. It's everything that led up to, and that great moment where he was doing the same stand-up for 20 people, and then a year later is doing it for 20,000 people, and he has no idea what happened. And it's in the book talking about, I'm still unpacking why this is playing to 20,000 people when
Yeah.
it didn't play to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
then,
boy, I understood that.
yeah. I'm so interested in just like the kind of emotional and psychological development of people that then allow them, I think the thing that you've talked about a lot has been just this kind of like, you've had this monomaniacal focus and they've just been, you've been allowed to. There were no people in your life being like, or people whose authority you took to heart being like, you can't do that.
No, there were people. I mean, I went to an art school that was very frustrated with me because I and who ended up being one of my close collaborators, Michael Gatos, was also in this school, even though he's a year ahead of me and kicking my ass and making my life a living hell by just existing and being better than me. Um, there was a couple people in I went to Cleveland Institute of Art, which has since been very lovely to me. But at the time, they were very behind. They didn't have any computers. They were like, and I was in graphic design, and they didn't have any computers, and which seems insane, right? But I wanted to be in comics, and I would just take every class and turn it into a comic class, or as close as I could get to the point where they eventually just put me in independent study, which means go sit in the corner and leave us alone.
Familiar.
Because
Yes.
I'm getting all my work done. I'm making comics. I'm not fucking around, but we don't know what else to tell you. So go sit in the corner and bring us your comic at the end of the semester, which I absolutely did. And my first comic I made in class, and I sold it at the comic store I worked at. As part of my graduating thesis was I'm going to sell this book to strangers, right? Like I'm going to go through the whole process of making a comic book, which is, by the way, how I end my semester as a teacher. Like you're going to make a comic book by the end of this semester because
Yeah.
that's how you become a comic artist.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing.
You make a
So
comic.
even though there are people in authority who are just like, don't do this, you were just like, well, I'll figure out a way to,
Well,
figure
I
out a
also-
way to triangulate around, like, okay, they're telling, this is the lesson they want me to learn, but I'm going to kind of do it the way I want to do it still.
Well, I saw a lot of people telling me what they thought the rules were and to see how like deeply unhappy they are, like as they're speaking to you. And also I met some people who were like actively, I had some friends' parents that were standing in the way of them being successful. I was dating a girl who got in very talented and she got into New York Tisch school, and the parents were doing everything in their power to make it impossible for her to go. And the mom finally said, I'm supposed to live in a world where you're more successful than me. And I was like, oh, I'm so lucky. That never came part of my life. And there are a lot of families where that is an issue, where the support isn't really support. That I did not worry about. And then my observations and some of my listen, I had little baby rage, I had a dad who didn't understand me, and the world, the 80s was, there's plenty of punk rock energy to grab onto and be part of, right? And really speaking to me, right? But you saw like some people who were telling you what the rules were and how deeply unhappy they seemed, and you're like, well, I met a bunch of comic artists and they seemed very happy. And again, that's funny to say now because I've also met some who aren't, but I luckily met some gregarious people who let me know this is absolutely worth it. And also, like, I want to make comics. And like, well, and I like talk about failure. I did not get into art school the first time I tried. I was rejected whole heart, and I remember pouting with a friend, and my friend's like, so what's the next step? And you're going to go to like case or something? Like you're going to be a doctor? I'm like, what? No, like, what are you talking about? Like, no, just find another way in. Like, I never, like, it never occurred to me that there was another path. So, and my friend Mike Oming has a book called literally No Plan B, because only after you graduate and get your success, you go, oh, I had no backup. The backup plan was make money to support the plan. So all through the 90s, every gig I took as a character artist, that was to feed making comics. It was all about the comics. So
I think the thing that's interesting though is, well, you tell me, were you able to actually articulate this when you were younger, or was it more just like, I can tell there's something funny. I'm almost like a instinctual, like these people's parents seem very unhappy, and I'm just like shying away from
I
them.
remember a day where I listened to a Richard Pryor album, one of the more philosophical ones, and I got way more truth out of it. And then the same day, my rabbi sat me down and gave me 45 minutes of the business. And everything Richard Pryor said to me made sense, and everything the rabbi said didn't make any sense to me. And I was like 16. And I remember I went to my friends and I talked about it, right? Like, and I wasn't, even mad at the rabbi. I was just like, okay, this is what people are talking about when they talk about people standing in your way or trying to like you don't care what makes me happy. You care what look makes the school look good, right? And I'm like, all right, then we're not on the same page, and I'm going to move on with my day,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, so you were really good at being able to externalize these things when you were younger.
I was able to question them. A lot of what we're talking about now, I came to terms with even as a parent. Oh, I have gone through. Now I'm a parent of an adult, and my friends are too. And we talk about who we were when we were this age and who we are now, and what we thought was going to happen. So a lot of this is retroactive, but I absolutely was questioning it, and then going, all right, there's nothing for me here. Go over here, right? Like I got more out of a Cleveland comic book show that Bob Wyacek, the inker, was at than anything else that happened to me that year. Like that Gil Kane story I tell in Fortune Glory, where I got to take a life drawing class from Gil Kane. I got more out of that hour than I did out of that whole year of schooling. Like I don't
Yeah.
remember anything that happened in school that year. I remember every word that was said in that Gil Kane, that angry Gil Kane drawing class.
Yeah. Okay. We're right at the end. So just final question. I just want
Okay.
to go.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm all over the place with you, but this is a complicated subject to me with a lot of moving pieces that I'm still dealing with.
No, I feel like there's a through line. I don't feel like this
Good.
was fractured.
Great. Great. It's distracted in my head. That's all.
No. It's I mean, I can tell you like it feels like I get the idea of like, okay, you had low income, you said nothing to lose. You had this focus like I want to do this thing and because I've memorized all these things in every issue, I know that it's a job. I know it's a real job. That's the thing where I'm like, I didn't know writing TV or movies was a job. Even if I've seen credits, it didn't occur to me. That's why I'm like, I'm so curious about like, oh, it seems like you were a lot more self-aware than I was when you were younger because I'm just like,
Only about this subject. That's why I'm
but
trying
that's
to
all
make
you
it very
needed.
clear. Because it's not like I was some savant child. There's other things I was completely tuned out on, like literally not doing my homework because I'm writing a fantastic four graphic novel that no one ever saw. Right. So what I was training for my life 100%. And I was very serious, and this was the goal. But at the moment, it probably looked like a child with some issues that no one knows how to deal with.
Because it worked out that you can go
Yeah, because
back
it worked
and
out,
say
everything's
this.
fine. But if
Yeah.
it didn't, yeah, it'd be like, oh, me and my mom talk about it all the time because she was like supporting me as best she could, not fully understanding it, and hoping that I'm right, or hoping that this would work out. You
Yeah.
know,
But that
it wasn't
core,
just hope. I was working every day, hours and hours a day, still having a social life, and still had a girlfriend. But someone had said to me early on that you make your creative life as important as your like biological life.
mm,
Like it's pooping, eating, sleeping, creating.
right.
I really forget who said this, but like someone said to me early on, your friends will be the least understanding, and not in a mean way, but they won't understand why can't you do that later? And you can't do it later, right? And so my best friend, I had that conversation with him, goes, there's no deadline here. I go, there is. And he never brought it up again. And then we were living together, like my best friend from high school. We were living together in college. And he goes, hey, let's go do this. I go, I have to finish these pages. And he goes, you do? You have to finish them? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And then never got brought up again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. But that goes back to then this feeling of like it's almost you say biological and creative almost as separate domains, but it feels the same. It's the same.
No, I think they're similar.
Yeah, it is. It's the same. Like when I'm like, I have an idea and I'm like, I have to write this now. Like I'm in the middle of washing the dishes and I have to stop washing the dishes and go to the computer to start writing. Like it's
Most
the
of my
same
friends
feeling as
today who are successful creators are very different from me and were raised very different from me, but our wiring is almost identical.
uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
our relationship to our wiring is very different too,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah. It's almost the same feeling as like having to take a piss. Like it's like I got to get this
No,
out
and I like I tell you, you have to decide that creating and pooping are equally important today. I'm not. I know I'm being cheeky, but I'm not. Like
No.
it's a biological function that you need to be a happy, adjusted member of society, right? So, and I learned that early on, and I applied it, and I realized it did work, and it did make me happy. I was a better boyfriend, I was a better husband, I was a better father if the work got done. And and then as you get older, you can figure out the balance to, like, also, like, once the kids become real, you're like, I will parent the hell out of this. And then when they go to bed, I'll get my work done. Like, I will get my work. Like, now I know enough about myself that I will get this work done.
Yeah.
So by
Yeah.
the time I needed to balance, I knew that I could do it.
Yeah. Okay. So last question then. When it comes to radical acceptance, I am very
I really hit you with
curious.
that one.
I'm very curious. What was your path to radical acceptance, right? What was your path to that? Because to being able to let go in certain situations, because again, now we're talking about not the same thing necessarily as like this creative need or this need to get this thing out that's almost the same as a biological need, but like in certain cases, in many cases, especially with collaboration, you got to let go of control. There's a lot of stuff there, but
Yeah,
like what
no,
was
yeah, you have to trust the process, or trust your partners, or
yeah.
trust yourself in this, and all the above. Also, I've had the benefit of a lot of my partners are legitimately excellent to maybe even genius, and I don't use the word lightly. But like David Mack and I met when we were younger, and he's just gotten better and better and better. And it's just, and I am one of those creators. Like, there's some musicians that you hear oh, they're like, the reason Eric Clapton hangs around with George Harrison is that he's better when he's around George Harrison. Like, he knows it. I'm better, and I love my friends, but I also know I'm better,
Yeah.
because I have to have dinner with Matt Fraction, that you can't show up being the shittiest version of yourself, because he's never going to be, right?
Right.
And I love that the work is so public, so I can say this without sounding cheeky. Like, yeah, you know what? I get to read a lot of my friends' work behind the scenes and see the real genius at work, and it's really inspiring. And it makes me go, "Oh yeah, you cannot suck. You have to earn your space at this table."
Yeah. So like
That's part of it. So radical, but I'm not answering the question. So I will say, I'm frustrated to bring this up, because part of trauma is just not throwing your trauma at other people. Like, and it's something that's really hard.
sure.
But I had a couple of medical incidents in my life, one of which was very public, because it happened just as I left Marvel, where I had been told I wasn't going to recover. Like, I was told, you're done. Like, this is it. I had a MRSA infection that went septic right here, surgery right, like, and I was told,
Your forehead.
yeah, write some notes to your kids. You're not getting out of here. Like, I was told, wrap it up. That's as close to the edge, I think, as you can get, and being aware of it. And then miraculously, it was years ago, everything's fine. But the trauma and the chaos went on for weeks. The actual event went on for a long time, and it created chaos in every aspect of my life. And that years of therapy to pull out of. And then to get to the realization that, all right, you have to radically accept that this is part of who that this is, you can't put in a box and put it away. It's who you are. It's going to be part of your art. It's going to be part of like how you express yourself and how you interact with almost everybody in the world. And it did change me. It did change how I react to things and what I give importance to and not, because there's nothing, really, the blessing of having such an emergency is really puts things in perspective. Also, you get to find out how awesome your friends are in a way that you did not want to test. Like, no, may you never have to test your friends, right? And I did, and I got to find out I have some incredible friends and family.
Yeah.
So I got to take away, and then I got to go back to my life, right? So, but with that came, just like you talk about, like, I like the realization, oh, you have no control over any of this, is what an emergency like that does to people. A lot of people have been in similar situations. They'll know what I'm talking about, where you're like, you thought the day was going to go one way, and then the rug is pulled, and it's just nothing you thought was going to happen is going to happen. And then radically accepting that that could happen any day of the week is, and sort of leaning into the adventure of it versus the trauma of it, can be a life very well led. So it did make me, some of the things we talked about today was stuff that I now know because of that trauma, that the yes anding of my life, when I didn't even know what improv tenets were, but I would yes and wherever I could creatively, because I picked that up from people who were doing it, not knowing there was a tenant and they were doing,
Yeah, yeah.
and you live with a comedian, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I've done improv. I'm a UCBer.
Oh, are you? Oh, that's oh, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you do that thing where you figure out that some things in your creative life are actually a lifestyle you can bring to everything you're doing, right? Like I can yes and parenting. I can yes and, you know, relationships into a space that makes me feel like I'm giving my best self versus, struggling through something. Anyway, I hate to bring up I hate to trauma bomb an interview, but you asked a direct question, and that is exactly where it came. I just want you to know I've trauma bombed some previous interviews. And always felt bad about it.
Oh
Like
no,
you say something that's so devastating, and then they're like, "Well, where do we go from here?" Well, thanks for having us. Anyway, so
no, no, no,
but
not at
this
all.
is where I learned it from, and talk about a cup half full situation, but like coming away from all of that with that tool has made the last 10 years of my life uh, much more not like I feel inspired by my own place.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not that.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing, I am very much down to talk
No, I
about.
mean it happened publicly, so it's not even like I'm like you can Google this. This was trending, like it was known, which was weird as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's actually you get to like see how people react to that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess then final question from that is I am curious, how do you think if it did at all? I mean, you said that, you yes and in your creative life, but like
Yes.
through this process, through the process of both of being traumatized and then going through therapy to talk about it and kind of deal with that trauma, do you think that affected the way you write? Or
Yeah,
do you
you get to you early on go, everything affects the way you write, the way the world is, the way your friends are, the way the industry is, the way the smallest interaction with any of my children can completely um inspire weeks of work that again is me just I don't have all the answers, but let the characters kind of like play house a scenario that lets me try to like figure out what I think about all this or create a storyline that is what in my mind the worst case scenario so I can like face it or like think about what would happen in that situation, right? It's the best and worst thing about training yourself as a crime writer because you literally train yourself to think, well, what's the worst place you could put your characters? And then that is in a way training yourself to think in catastrophe, which is not a healthy space to live in as a parent.
Mm-mm. No, but it also
'Cause,
connects,
yeah.
I think, to our Judaism, at least the way I was
Oh,
raised.
100%. And also getting back to, I have some last questions for you. So you grew up in Pittsburgh, right?
In Reading, Pennsylvania. I did go to
Reading,
Pitt.
Pennsylvania,
I
which
lived
I've
in
been to,
Pittsburgh. Yeah, but
right,
I
with
grew up
all
in Reading.
all right. So I grew up with Cleveland and Pittsburgh having very competitive natures to them. And me and my friends would go to Pittsburgh all the time. Like the NCSY was connected to Pittsburgh NCSY. So we would go to Pittsburgh where we would end up having like girlfriends in Pittsburgh. Like I had a girlfriend in Pittsburgh for a year and a half of high school. Like we would go to Pittsburgh every weekend to make out with our girlfriends. And it was always funny to me that there was competition between the two cities, like vigorous, like sports related Cleveland sucks, Pittsburgh rules, and I always forgot about it. And I just was in Pittsburgh this year for a signing, which I've never done a signing in Pittsburgh before. And this signing was just the warmest, best signing, and I couldn't believe how well it went. And almost every other person went, "Hey, Cleveland!" Like, oh yeah, you guys still live in that space. That's hilarious.
It's such a weird
So funny
city.
to me.
I love it because it's the city that taught me. I think the art scene there was very much like if you had an idea, you would just go do the idea. It really
Right.
taught me,
I have that in Portland. Portland is very that way. Portland, it's almost like you're almost peer pressured into, well, you better do that creative thing you're thinking of because everyone else is.
yeah.
Why aren't you?
Yeah.
You know,
And the same thing with the sports stuff. It is everywhere. Like in the punk scene, I was part of the indie rock and the punk scene there. And even the punks, even the hardcore kids who are like as left as it possibly gets are into the Steelers. Like you get
it's
together
so
and watch the Steelers.
but yeah, no, and a great lesson for me was I was dating a girl who was really into the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I didn't understand it. And then she's like, "You're into this, and I'm into this, and that's what is we're equal because we're both passionately into the same thing." And I'm like, "Yeah, but mine's comedy. Mine's way better than the Pittsburgh Penguins." Anyway,
Brian, thank you so much for joining me today.
no problem. And I just want to reiterate that some of the things we're talking about is stuff I figured out later, like as I was barreling through it. And David Mack was there with me for a lot of it. So we often talk about how we were just barreling through all that we had just to get to the next thing. And only then can we look back and go, all right, that was the best version of me. That was the shittiest version of me. Like that, I like that version. I want to do more of that, less of that. So if you are listening to this, and don't be frustrated by where you are in the world, but be your best collaborator, and let yourself fail. Don't see, and there's something about this version of our society that's really anti-failure. It's the Instagram. It's two things in this society that I really think is hurting us: the Instagram filters and this now decade of reality show competition, creative competition shows, like a baking show, where you're the winner and everyone else is a loser. And you're a loser, and they play loser music because you're a loser. And that is not what creative journey is at all. At all. So it does create like a winner-loser mentality in some people, and they get confused by the reality of what it's like to create things when it's not like this. So failure is good. Failure means you're trying. Failure means you will get there eventually. Every single one of your heroes in any regard failed dramatically, sometimes privately, sometimes publicly, sometimes both. Got up and did it again and figured it out. How many musicians, they made a shit album and then a great one? How many filmmakers, like, who can make great movies, just fucked one up and then the next one is brilliant, right? Like I think about Spielberg in 1941 all the time.
Yeah.
There's no filmmaker with a movie that I still kind of, even though it's problematic as hell, still kind of have an affection for, because it's sandwiched in between classic motion pictures, and it all came from the same genuine heart, right? That I'm trying to entertain you with some inspiration, right? So think about those things. Think about the biggest failures of your heroes, whatever field they're in, and how it did not define them. Right. And so as if you're in the beginnings and this is what you're thinking of, or if you're reconsidering your beginnings because you're listening to this, think about what you learned from the bad stuff and how that really was the good stuff.
I love that. Thanks again.
No, my absolute pleasure.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye.